Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Dinowrestler Yugioh deck profile for April 2023. We want to update the Dinowrestlers for a while now. They're a really awesome link deck that focus on just being able to get out a bunch of different Dinowrestler monsters and then utilize either your link play that you have with your main go-to boss monster, King T-Wrestle, or even have some fusion and synchro options with the deck as well, depending on what monster you may have wanted to summon out with the deck, thanks to all of our many different monsters, and using our field spell to have more of like a 1v1 fight against your opponent's monsters, using your bigger boss monsters being your Dinowrestlers. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. Normally I start off with the 3-ofs, but there is one more important Dinowrestler monster that is at 1, and that is Dinowrestler Pankratops. You would definitely run 3 of this card, but sadly it's still 1 on the ban list just because of how good this card is. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Pankratops once per turn this way, and quick effect, you contribute 1 Dinowrestler monster, target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use this effect of Pankratops once per turn. So it's probably at its full power in the Dinowrestler deck because you don't have to tribute Pankratops like you would have in all the other staple plays that people do for this card. Being able just to tribute another Dinowrestler that you have on the field, making it all the better for your setup. But sadly, like I said, it's still at a 1-of for us to use in the deck. I also run 3 copies of our newest Dinowrestler from the last video, which is Dinowrestler Yugioh. You can discard 1 other Dinowrestler monster, special summon this card from your hand. You can tribute 1 Dinosaur monster, then target 1 Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard with a different original name from the tributed monster, special summon it in defense position. You can only use this effect of Yugioh once per turn. It's an easy special summon and setup of other monsters onto the field for you to use. Whether you want to go for your synchro play, you can easily do so with your Yugioh, and then some of your other setup, or even go for more of the fusion play, being the requirements for the 1 additional Dinowrestler monster that you'll use with your fusion summon play in the deck, being your Tyrant Dino Fusion. For some of the other 3-ofs that I run in the deck as well, I run 3 copies of Dinowrestler Stegosaur. If this card is special summon, you can add 1 Dinowrestler monster or 1 World Dino Wrestling from your deck to your hand. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target 1 Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard except for Stegosaur, special summon it. You can use each effect of Stegosaur once per turn. So you have search power with this card, being able to add an additional Dinowrestler monster to your hand, or get your main go-to field spell, which sets up the entire playstyle of the Dinowrestlers thanks to this card. And then being able to just have more of a resource build definitely makes it a 3-of resource for you to rely on. I also run 3 copies of Dinowrestler Capoeiraptor. If this card's in attack position, it cannot be destroyed by battle. And if this card is attacked, change it to defense. And at the end of damage step, during the standby phase, if this card's in defense position, you can special summon 1 Dinowrestler Capoeiraptor from your deck. You can only use this effect of Capoeiraptor once per turn. That's why we're running 3 of, so you always have a resource to be able to go into, thanks to this card on the field. And with it, you also just have more of an exception of more Capoeiraptor and more of a protection play with this card while it is in attack position for that first battle that your opponent will do. We're also running 3 copies of the tuner, Dinowrestler Koala Salat. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, this card cannot be used as link material except for the link summon of a Dinowrestler monster. You can only special summon Dinowrestler Koala Salat once per duel this way. So you have a special summon play for your tuner. It's also just more of a resource to extend into because it is the level 2 tuner that you will use to special summon out your Dinowrestler Yugioh Spinosavat. So even if you use the special summon play, let's say this card gets banished and you want to go into an additional synchro play, you at least need that other resource in your deck for you to be able to summon out onto the field. For some of the lower numbers for the Dinowrestlers, I'm also running 2 copies of Dinowrestler Capaptera. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Capaptera once per turn. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as link material for the link summon of a Dinowrestler monster, you can activate this effect. The link summon that used this card as material gains 1,000 attack to the end of this turn. So if you go for some of your bigger boss monsters, you can hit some pretty big numbers thanks to your Capaptera. It's just more of a specific play with the opponent controlling more monsters than you do for the send effect, and the additional attack boost having to use this card for that link play to do so. I also run 2 copies of Dinowrestler Yugioh. With this card, if you control a Dinowrestler monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing during your turn. If your opponent special summons a monster while this card's in the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can target a level 4 lower Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, special summon it, then add this card to your hand. You can only use this effect of Yugioh once per turn. It's a recycle card. That's what makes it so great for the setup. Having that normal summon, and then going for the link play with this card. And if your opponent controls that monster while it's in the graveyard, or special summons a monster, being able to add that other Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard back to your hand for the special summon and add this card means that you can have the normal summon play to reuse again with this card on the field during the following turn if you still have that Dinowrestler monster. And for some of the 1-ofs for the Dinowrestlers, I also run 1 Valyonyx. This one, if your opponent controls a monster, or if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand while you control a Link 3 or higher Dinowrestler monster. Face-up monsters you control are unaffected by the activate effects of your opponent's Link 3 or lower monsters. It's a very specific play style of a card. That's why I'm only running the 1 copy. Same with the Martial Anga. So with this card during damage calc, when your Dinowrestler monster battles a monster with equal or higher attack, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Your battling monster cannot be destroyed by battle. Also end the battle phase after this damage step. And once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn to activate this effect, and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon it as another resource back into the field, but both are pretty specific with how you want to summon their cards out on the field for them to use. That's why we're only running 1-ofs for each. Now, I also run a small little generic dinosaur package with 3 copies of Soul Eating Oviraptor. If it's normal or special summon, you can take 1 dinosaur monster from your deck and either add to your hand or send it to the graveyard. You can target 1 other level 4 lower dinosaur monster in the field, destroy it, and then special summon 1 dinosaur from your graveyard in defense position, giving you destruction plays, but set up for some of your other Dinowrestler monsters definitely does help because, and also you have the standby play if you were to summon your Capaptera in defense mode onto the field using your Oviraptor or any of the other Dinowrestler monsters, special summoning out your Stegosaur, adding the Dinowrestler monster, and 1 additional card because of it. And then lastly, for more of a bigger boss monster on the field, I also run 2 copies of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Just being able to special summon this card by banishing 2 dinosaurs from your graveyard gives you access to a monster that if you were to destroy other dinosaurs on the field, being able to clear out your opponent's field very, very easily with this card. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 copies of World Dino Wrestling. It's the field spell while you control a Dinowrestler monster. Each player can attack with only 1 monster during each battle phase. If your Dinowrestler monster attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 200 attack during damage calc only. And if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon 1 Dinowrestler monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of World Dino Wrestling once per turn. So graveyard setup, it makes for a great search, but on the field it also makes for an awesome lockdown, making it so your opponent can only take on 1 Dinowrestler at a time, thanks to this card. And with it, it's like that wrestling match that I spoke of before, being the 1 versus 1 play that your opponent is meant to do with your 1 big boss monster Dinowrestler you have on the field. And if your opponent gets rid of this field spell, you have a search in the graveyard to utilize if your opponent tries to make a comeback and has more monsters than you. And for the fusion spell, running 3 copies of Tyrant Dino Fusion. Fusion summon 1 Dinowrestler monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion material. If you do the first time that face a monster on the field be destroyed by battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. An extra protection for our go-to Dinowrestler Fusion being Dinowrestler Chimera T-Rexel, needing the link monster that we'll use to summon it out, and 1 additional Dinowrestler monster because of it. You can also use it as more of a quick play option to then summon out an additional monster on the field to go up against your opponent's cards. I also run 3 copies of Fossil Dig, more of the search power in this deck. Being able to have a search for one of our best setups being Dinowrestler Iguanodraca. With this card, I think the only card for the Dinowrestlers that we can't search with this is Pancratops, but even so, you can use Iguanodraco for that setup with all of our other Dinowrestler monsters thanks to the search that Fossil Dig can provide. I also run 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. This is to set up our World Dino Wrestling in the graveyard to give us an additional search if need be if our opponent went first and they have at least 1 monster more than we do on the field. And for some of the 1-ofs, I run 1 copy of Monster Reborn, 1 copy of Foolish Burial, just more of a monster setup, especially with Foolish Burial in our graveyard to use with Soul Eating Oviraptor, and also with Monster Reborn, just giving us that additional resource on the field for us to summon out. And then for the traps, I run 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. Each player can only control one type of monster. Send all the other ones that control the graveyard. We only run Dinosaur Monster in the deck, so that really doesn't stop us at all. And it also takes up a good majority of the extra deck as well for our plays. But this can definitely hurt a good number of decks that your opponent may be playing with this card on the field. So with it, you have a more control play strategy for you to utilize against your opponent and all the different dinosaur monsters that you run. Moving on now to the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Dinowrestler King T Wrestle. You need 2 or more Dinowrestler monsters to make it. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until the end of damage step. If your opponent's monster cannot target monsters for attacks except this one, at the start of your opponent's battle phase, you can target one attack position monster your opponent controls. This battle phase, your opponent cannot attack with other monsters until that one has, and if it does not declare an attack, destroy at the end of the battle phase. This makes King T Wrestle more of a card that makes your opponent, attack into your monsters, making it set up the wrestling match that is meant to be done thanks to your World Dino Wrestling with your one go-to boss monster on the field. I also run 3 copies of Dinowrestler Terra Parcorio. You need 2 or more two Dinowrestler monsters to make it. If you activate World Dino Wrestling, you can target a Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, add to your hand, and if this card is sent to the graveyard as link material, you can target one Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position, but negates effects. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except for Dinowrestler monsters. So, just an easier way using Parcorio to go into your bigger boss monster on the field just by activating your field spell, giving you that search to your hand, and then also being able to target that Dinowrestler in your graveyard and special summon it in defense as one of the monsters that will be having King T Wrestle point to it also. I also run 1 Asa the Earth Charmer and 1 Nightmare Unicorn for the additional link monsters that I run just for more of a generic lineup in the deck as well, especially for some of our other non-Dino Wrestler monsters that I run in the deck to use for our setup. And for the fusion monsters, I run 2 copies of Dinowrestler Chimera T Wrestle. You need 1 Dinowrestler Link monster and 1 Dinowrestler monster. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell traps until the end of damage step. If it attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage, and your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attacks except for this one. And if it destroys a monster by battle, it gains 500 attack. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. So you have your own attack position set up thanks to World Dino Wrestling. And then Chimera T Wrestle will just take care of that monster on the field, and being more of a difficult card to get over when it gains attack, your opponent may just end up having to destroy by a card effect to begin with, and then you can just take out all of your opponent's own monsters thanks to this. I also run 2 copies of Dinowrestler Giga Spinosavat. It needs a dinosaur tuner and 1 non-tuner monster. If it battles, your opponent can activate spell traps until the end of damage step. Your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attack except this one, and once per turn you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and if this card be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy 1 card you control instead, setting up some of your other destruction plays thanks to this card, but also being able to set up some other cards if need be in the graveyard for you to get additional searches because of the card you destroyed. For more of a generic dinosaur lineup, I also run 2 copies of Evilzar Lagia and 2 copies of Evilzar Dolka. So with this, you have more of a play to rely on thanks to Soul Eating Oviraptor, being able to have an Xyz monster to go into since we are kind of limited with some of the monsters that we have in the deck, needing Dinowrestler monsters to go into Chimera T Wrestle and our 2 Link monsters as well. Having Xyz monsters to use with our Soul Eating Oviraptor at least gives us an additional play to make use of it on the field instead of just going into a generic Link monster. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, being able to set up a good majority of our summons thanks to cards like Iguana Draco, just needing this and 1 other dinosaur monster for that initial play. If you have 1 more to rely on, that could be your normal summon as well, or our special summon. So if you have these 3 in your hand, you can special summon out the Koala Sot since you control no monsters. Then you can use Iguana Draco, discarding it to special summon this card from your hand. Then being able to tribute 1 other dinosaur monster to target a Dinowrestler in your graveyard with a different name and special summon that card in defense position. So then you have that more additional setup with these cards on the field. Having 2 monsters for that play, you can go for the additional Link 2 using your Dinowrestler Terraparcorio for the summon. And then it all comes down to what other additional cards you may have. If you have your special summon, you've already done the special there, you can go for your normal summon play, summoning out an additional Dinowrestler monster from your hand. And then from there, you have the Link 3 if you have your World Wrestling to activate with the field spell while Terraparcorio is on the field. You can target one Dinowrestler in your graveyard and add to your hand. So then you have that play to add back and then go for that normal summon using that monster. And then from there, you have your Link 3 setup into your King T Wrestle. If you have more of a setup with the, let's say, same special summon, either you go for the Iguano Draco setup or your Pankratops on the field, you can have the setup with your Soul Eating Oviraptor, being able to take an additional Dino monster from your deck and then either add to your hand or send to the graveyard, depending on the Dinowrestler monster being a monster for the play. To take a Dinosaur monster from your deck and either add to your hand or send it to the graveyard, you can go for whatever you need for that specific search on the field. You can even go for the additional search of your Ultimate Conductor Tyranno if need be, but also having the tribute play, thanks to the setup that Soul Eating Oviraptor can provide. You have the additional search to rely on using this card and that one additional special summon of your Dinowrestler monster on the field. So with that, it all comes down to what else you have in your hand for that search and setup that you can go for. But a lot of times you can go for the Iguano Draca, because then with that search, as long as you have that other dinosaur monster to discard, you can summon it on the field. And then from there, you have your search and setup ready to go thanks to your Dinowrestler monsters. And then also with that additional play on the field, depending on the monsters you may have, you have your tuner play if you go for the Koalasot or your fusion summon with your quick play fusion spell. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. Like I said, I always like to update these Vrains decks that normally get overlooked. We haven't had any real Dinowrestler support in a while, so I think we're definitely due for maybe a new type of monster, whether it be another Link monster or even a new type of extra deck play. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.